going after these players, asking for autographs. And I was just floored. I couldn't believe that people were getting autographs from professional gamblers.
It's weird being recognized now and being the person. I was always the person that's like, oh yeah, look at there's Barry Greenstein, there's Daniel Grounder, there's Phil Ivey, there's all these people that you see on TV, and you're like, to give them a chance to meet them. Now to be like one of those people where people come up to me, and it's all been surreal and it's all happened so fast.
That's the American dream, baby. That's it right there. Yeah, 20 years ago, they wouldn't even admit what they do for a living, and now people want, you know, people clamor for the autographs.
Look, one day you can be sitting on your couch watching the best poker players in the world play on the World Poker Tour, and the next week, literally, you can go and sit down and compete with those guys, and unlike any other sport, you could win.
The good and bad of television is television made everybody a movie star. You put somebody in front of the camera, they want to be a ham, they want to look 5 minutes at a hand, where poker is very simple. Either you're in, you're out, or you're raised. It doesn't take you 15 minutes to make these decisions.
There are so many huge differences between the people who were doing this before 2003 and the people who came into it after 2003 in terms of attitude. And there are people who are clearly performing for TV.
When they come in with these glasses or backwards cap and they're coming in with all these little tchotchkes, they're assholes. Okay, they're complete jerks.
I hate sunglasses. I think sunglasses should be banned from poker.
The young kids, like, you know, with the glasses and the dark glasses and the backwards hat, the few that I know, socially, they're like inept. They're like retarded.
You don't look at those guys and it's like watching, you know, George Clooney and Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11. It's like watching guys your exact human scale, and you just think like, that guy.
People want to be famous too, and you go, what? I mean, you want to what? I want to be famous. What does that mean? You want to be famous for what? I don't know. I just want to be famous. And you go like, well, okay.
The old-time gamblers, what made them so interesting was that they were operating out on the edge. You know, they were on the dark side. And today, you know, it's watching a guy filling up the gas at the station.
You know, I don't understand it. In the old days, what is now Texas Holdem was a game that was developed by the riverboat gamblers to skin the unsuspecting guy. Now, television is using it to skin us.
At the end of the day, I would bet anything that this is simply a fad.
Well, you know, I went for 4 months without income, and I had a good run playing poker, but it still doesn't make up for no income.
Money was a hoot. I mean, he's just a great guy, and we hired him to do our accounting. He was basically our comptroller, handled all the books for the restaurants.
I got that job. My old boss wanted me to go in for a consulting gig just to get some money. You know, they were going to pay me a consulting gig to come into this restaurant.
Oh, I think he spent more time playing poker online than he actually did doing the books. I mean, you know, that was his passion more so than accounting. I can guarantee you that.
I had 60 bucks in my account. I played a $39 tournament in Poker Stars. And when I signed up, I thought it was a cash tournament. And found out that you have to win the whole thing to get a seat to the next week, which got you a seat into the World Series. I was trying to get $8,000, because $8,000 paid off my credit card. When you get down the final table, I was the chip leader, and when you play these things, you talk deals at the end. They're giving away 3 seats to the main event of the World Series, and the 4th place is $8,000 in cash. The seat was $10,000, but if you win a seat, you can't sell the seat. You have to take the seat, and you have to play. So I get no cash for that. So what I try to do is talk deal with people when we get down to 6 hands, say, I just want the $8,000 and I'll go away. So I started to give my chips away slowly, trying to make sure I lasted long enough to get down to 4 people, but at the same time not have a whole lot of chips. My buddy saw that I was trying to make the deal. He's watching on his computer at another place, so he called me and said, I'll give you $5,000. I'll take half your action in the tournament. Plus, they give you $1,000 for traveling expenses, so I'd have $6,000. And so I was like, man, you gotta go do this. You gotta get in the World Series. You're right there. This is your chance. So I ended up winning the seat. Was ecstatic about winning the seat. You know, I get to go play in the World Series of Poker. Buddy calls me up a week later, said, that $5,000 that I have for you, I don't have it. I had a bad run. I don't have it. You know, obviously, now I'm furious. I have a seat with no cash.
Hi, I'm Daniel Negreanu, and welcome to PokerStars, the world's largest online poker site.
The internet absolutely changed everything. I call what happened to poker in the post-internet age a sonic boom. I mean, literally, it was like, boom.
My sense is Rounders gave people the vocabulary, the vernacular, and then the Holdem let people inside of the thought process and let people think, oh, I get it. I love watching these people. I want to be a part of it. And then they were able to go to their computers and they didn't have to take the risk in public.
Switch on, log on, money in. Boom, I'm playing poker. I mean, that is just genius.
And you don't have to get on a plane. You don't have to drive to the airport, pay for the hotel, tip the dealers. It's stunningly convenient.
In the mid-90s, the internet poker world started up. There was one site that started up, was a little tiny site, and people started hearing about it. It was word of mouth in the poker rooms. Then they started taking a couple advertisements in magazines. And even I thought that was kind of, you know, how can you trust the internet, the cyberspace back then?
I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, or if it would catch on.
I thought it was a joke, you know, people playing online.
Who's going to play online when you can't see the person? I mean, isn't it the biggest part of poker, looking somebody in the eyes?
All of a sudden, one day you're looking, there's 1,000 people online. And you look a few months later, there's 20,000 people online.
Sure enough, I was proven wrong again.
Originally, I wasn't a fan of internet poker either, because my very first columns on the subject warned of cheating.
Let's just see if I have the concept down. You start off by sending a big chunk of your cash to somebody in cyberspace. And then you call him up on the telephone. And then he shows you pictures of some playing cards he claims you have, and pictures of playing cards he claims he has, and then he tells you whether you lost and whether you should send more money. You are playing against a computer. You are playing against somebody you don't know, and don't tell me that someone's not going to take that edge.
I really watched the online world develop. Back in 1989, when I played, I was actually playing for play money. There was no real money involved. Then along come the real money sites.
The first internet poker site was a site called Planet Poker. It's surprising you don't hear about Planet Poker anymore because they should have had the entire industry.
And Planet Poker stumbled along. Their software really wasn't very efficient, so they'd crash all the time. Then along comes Paradise Poker. And Paradise Poker now is the king of the universe. Then along comes this upstart called Party Poker.
An opportunity came up for me to go to work for this company that was going to develop the software for a company that became known as partypoker.com. I'm actually the one that said, this is the name you need. They had 6 domain names picked out for this site, and they said, which one do you like? When I got to India, I said, well, this is a no-brainer, Party Poker. And that was how Party Poker got launched.
There are bubbles, you know, throughout history. The dot-com bubble, for example, at the end of the 1990s and so on, where you had a wild speculation based on the returns of a few successful enterprises, fueled this irrational exuberance.
In the year 2000, maybe 2001, an Indian guy named Anurag Dixit wrote the Party Poker platform,
which became the largest site in the world by far. It grew faster than Microsoft or any other company in that world. And the lady that hired me Her name was Ruth Parasol, who started the company and became the most successful businesswoman in the history of the earth with no outside investors, and in less than 4 years went public for $9 billion with a B.
Party Poker was by far the biggest in the world. They were Coca-Cola of online poker, McDonald's of online poker, that type of company, and growing and becoming that big of an entity.
Eventually, PokerStars came on, and I think they took it a little more seriously. I think the software is better. I created PokerStars with introducing online poker tournaments.
The boardroom table and the poker table.
And then along comes Full Tilt Poker. And I think, Full Tilt Poker, I helped design the software of Full Tilt Poker, I believe. Well, so I have to say, I believe we have the best software, and I really believe we do.
We're fully leveraged. Reading risk and reward here isn't much different than reading it on a spreadsheet. We play because poker's like business.
You know, the software development and the marketing were led by a lot of people who understood poker for the first time. You know, really, none of the other poker sites that came before Full Tilt were run by poker players. And if you're a poker player, then you should be playing there. I don't think that there's an important human activity that didn't find its way on the internet, right? You know, some of those things just turned out not to be particularly interesting or functional, like buying groceries. And some of those things turned into porn. But maybe one notch below porn in terms of popularity is poker.
Early on, internet players were kind of scoffed at. Oh, he's just an internet player was really an insult. And I really think that's all changed.
I'm an old school poker player. You know, I'm a guy that likes to play live poker where you can look your opponent in the eye. Well, you don't get that opportunity when you play online poker. And I'm highly impressed with the young online kids that are now coming into the real poker world. These guys are phenomenal poker players.
If it wasn't for the internet, some of this new breed wouldn't be around today. The game became so big over the past 5 years, and the prize pools were so big that they don't appreciate the fact that the older players had to work for it.
I have a lot of respect for the kids that, that kind of grew up online playing poker. I think it's very cool. I mean, when you think that you can sit behind your computer and you can, pay all your bills just by your mind beating somebody else's mind, it's a beautiful concept.
Yeah, I guess when you play poker as a living, then you don't have any boss. You're your own boss. And I think that's what a lot of people like about it.
My goal was to make enough money to pay for a shore house that summer with friends. I guess I did that and more, and all the other stuff that came after that was just a pleasant surprise.
I'm 22 and poker's allowed me to play in Vegas, in London, in Barcelona, Aruba, Costa Rica.
And now I play 8 high-stakes cash games at once online, and I've vlogged like way over 1 million hands. Online poker is the great equalizer, so that you can really crush the learning curve. This is why you can have young kids who just played online actually have more experience than some old pros.
Let me tell you how the internet screwed up poker, okay? When a guy sucks out on the river, on the internet, you cannot take the guy out in the parking lot and you cannot break his fucking knees.
My generation kind of gets a bad rap in the poker industry, like, oh, those young internet kids who had all that success, they can sometimes be cocky, they can sometimes be a little arrogant, they can sometimes be a little more blasé about the game, maybe have a lot less respect for the money and how it was earned. Because it wasn't really earned, we kind of got it quickly, right? It's a great way to do life, right? I mean, you can have success at the young age and you can have the energy and the youth and the exuberance to be able to enjoy it. For once, my generation has it right.
The people, especially the young guys, who are coming along thinking, I'm a good poker player, I'm going to win a big tournament, and then I'm going to be a poker celebrity, and then I'm going to get paid to make appearances, and, PokerStars or one of the other big sites is going to pay me big bucks to represent them. That era is gone already.
I guarantee you 50% of the players here in this room think they're eventually going to hit their American dream through poker, and it's not going to happen.
I think it's really like a crying shame what happened when Bill Frist kind of threw this bill back door. It was really seedy and really dirty.
Well, you know, I see the UIGEA as one of the great pieces of political hackery that we've seen in a long time.
These people are moral monstrosities.
Really just kind of scummy politics to do it the way that he did. He basically, essentially, it's called the Unlawful Internet Gaming Enforcement Act, which he tacked on to a port security bill, which has nothing to do with guys playing poker on the internet in their underwear. But he was able to do it at the 11th hour.
I call it the Midnight Express that was snuck through in midnight and attached to the port security bill. Why, it specifically said you cannot use the internet for playing poker.
I mean, basically the UIGEA, no one saw this coming.
After the UIGEA got passed, the executives for Party Poker decided to pull out of the United States, saying goodbye to 85% of their customer base.
Their lawyers advised them that, you know, what you're doing may be a gray area, may be deemed illegal sometime where shareholders could sue you and you'll lose back all your money. So in truth, all the publicly traded companies that were associated with online gaming sites pulled out of the United States back when they passed that law in October 2006, and all the privately held companies did not.
It's made it harder for people to get their money on the sites. And it's actually scared some of the sites out of the U.S. market.
If they fly into the United States, the people that are the owners of the companies, or even board members, they're being arrested on site. So they have taken their money and run.
Casella.
All right.
Those are the only Republican votes.
Now, many of my friends in the Congress voted for this bill because they said, well, this way we can stop young people from coming in, from doing something they really shouldn't be, a 16-year-old kid who's gambling, etc. At the same time, they said horse racing, we're carving that out. You can bet on horse racing.
Or you can play blackjack, or you can buy lottery tickets where you have almost no chance of winning and there's no skill involved, but you can't play poker.
I mean, the real thing is whether or not it gets separated out from other forms of gambling, which I think it deserves to.
Poker does exist in a sort of interesting world as far as its legal status goes. The companies that operate online poker have long argued that it's a game of skill in part and not purely a game of chance, and therefore is not illegal. That's separate from other casino games as far as its status and whether you can play it over the internet. The government clearly does not take that view.
Online poker is something that is not outlawed by any federal law.
The UIGEA didn't make anything illegal that was previously legal, so it didn't change the law. It changed some of the enforcements of the law.
So you've got all these kind of entrenched gambling interests that you can't really write an effective law that would truly outlaw something like poker without affecting these other things. So instead, they decided to punt and just try and write a vague law that would scare banks.
You also have sort of a dispute over the interpretation of a law called the Wire Act. It was passed in 1961, and this law is used by the government often to apply to online gambling, including online poker.
And the Wire Act says, basically in a nutshell, that you're not allowed to bet on sports, across state lines over the telephone. Now, how is playing poker, where you're actually making the actions, poker is clearly a game of skill, where you actually are making the actions that make you win or lose money, how is that like betting on someone else's sports game? It's ridiculous to suggest that.
Poker is, I remember seeing Chris Ferguson. He was I was making breakfast one morning and I saw him testifying in front of Congress, and he had taken $1 on an internet site and he turned it into 20,000 without ever having more than 10% of his stack at risk. It's not, I think, which is why it's legal in California. It was proven to be a game of skill.
This is not something that has really been settled by the Supreme Court, for example.
It's a good question. Is there a difference between a gambler and a poker player? Well, a lot of poker players take pride and they think it's interesting to say, I'm not a gambler, because I play so well, I'm playing within the odds, so therefore I'm not really gambling. No, wrong. There's also, you might have the edge, but many things can happen over a career that put yourself in that gambling mode. You might go broke even though you have the edge. So you're still gambling, and don't kid yourself.
You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away.
know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. Great philosophy.
How many of these guys have been up at the top and then been busted? You know, how many times, you know, it's a cyclical thing, because, you know, come on, a lot of these guys are sick, degenerate gamblers on top of being poker players, you know. They bet, you know, 100 grand on 2 cockroaches running up the wall, you know, so.
Did I ever go broke? Let me see.
You know, Dole Brunson said he's been broke 20 times. I know I've done that.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm broke right now.
Let me think. Probably close to 6,000 or 7,000 times.
I wish I was broke most of the time. That would be at least getting me up a level higher.
I could fill a whole room with people who've gotten big scores in poker and are totally broke.
But that's no reason not to have gambling, I don't think, and it's one of the reasons why I don't have any ill wills. Sure, I feel bad when I've taken a person's last dollar, but the reality is I didn't make them do that, and I don't think I would feel any less guilty if I was selling an overweight person a gallon of ice cream at the store, or if I wasn't selling cigarettes at the store. I mean, you know, people sell cigarettes and it could cause lung cancer. Should I not sell cigarettes? And then maybe I shouldn't sell, you know, bleached white flour either, because that's known to give people problems as well, or sugar. You know, should I check to see if they have diabetes? Gambling is a form of entertainment, and if you abuse that service that we're providing as dealers and casinos, whose fault is that?
Any legislation would almost certainly have to pass by the top Republican on the House Financial Services Committee, Spencer Backus, who opposes any federal right to gamble and thinks it's addictive.
My main concern is the youth of this country, you know, whether it's drugs, whether it's gambling.
It's just inconceivable for me that we can live in America and somebody in Washington, D.C. can tell a guy who's been working all day long that he can't go home at night and play in a $20 satellite online if that's what he wants to do with his money.
You have a portion of this country that doesn't understand freedom. They just don't get it.
And they remind me of days of Prohibition.
When Truman was a young man, he learned to love poker early on. And when he was courting his wife, Bess, he wrote her a letter acknowledging that while he was deeply religious, that he did play poker and that sometimes religious people look down on that. But he said, I don't think it's such a bad thing to do.
And Harry Truman would have weekly poker games at the White House with cigars and bourbon. God bless him.
Eisenhower was a great poker player. Obama played in a regular game for 10 years, once or twice a week. I mean, that's how he met so many other, you know, senators.
I mean, we know that President Grant loved to play poker. We know that President Harding loved to play poker. And the rumor was one time that he bet the White House china on a set of cards and lost.
And Richard Nixon allegedly financed his first congressional campaign by playing poker. I mean, what does that tell you?
My favorite historical example is the New Deal. And I never had any history professors who said, well, yeah, this is a poker tournament. Obviously, he's talking about cards. It's a New Deal.
The pokeriticious behavior of soldiers and politicians and diplomats has been completely integral to how this country has worked from the beginning, which makes Bill Frist and the other sponsors of that bill so short-sighted and cynical and ridiculous.
They're leaving billions of dollars on the floor. Because if they tax it and regulate it, which is what everybody wants to give the U.S. government money. It's like, here, let's take this money, take it.
What a lot of people don't understand is the law didn't get passed for reasons of morality.
Oh, that's right. Bet first, cards later.
Those people who are using the morality argument are just pawns in the game of the politicians who are getting money from other lobbying groups to lobby against poker, and they could care less about the moral stance.
My fear is that the online action will be controlled by casinos, such as Harrah's, which are notorious for squeezing every last dime and nickel out of every situation.
It's a big, big money opportunity that was missed by them, and obviously they're trying to get in on the bandwagon now, and you don't blame them for it.
Well, I think the reason that the poker world views the brick and mortar casinos sometimes in a negative light is they feel as though the interests are not aligned.
I think there was a real question in 2010 when people were talking about legalizing online poker federally as far as how this was going to work, because you had these big companies that were not operating online poker in the United States. They were doing what they would say was the right thing. They were keeping out of the US. Now they wanted to operate in the US. Companies like Party Poker, you have Caesars Entertainment, major casino company, runs the World Series of Poker, has this brand name in poker. They want to do it. At the same time though, all the US players are with basically two websites, PokerStars and Full Tilt Poker. So if you're Caesars or you're, Party or whatnot, it's not necessarily great that these guys are the incumbents and they have all the US players.
In January of 2010, people were betting that there was a 70 or 80% chance of poker being legalized.
And I just could tell from my reporting there that there were things that were changing.
When you look at the poker boom, first of all, the kindling that got it all started, I think, is just that poker is such a great game. And people love it. They're fascinated by it. Now you could watch the game on TV and then try it on the internet, and then all of a sudden watching on TV was more interesting. So all that was happening. And then Moneymaker happened. Maybe that was just the final can of gasoline we needed to really make it all just explode.
Obviously, I would say that it comes down to the Moneymaker effect.
Moneymaker. Moneymaker. His name was Moneymaker.
With a made-for-TV name, Chris Moneymaker.
Chris Moneymaker happened in 2003.
Well, it's an amazing story. I mean, that was the story that launched the poker boom.
Yeah, what Chris Moneymaker did was he bought in online to a satellite, and what a satellite is just a smaller buy-in tournament that gets you into a bigger tournament. I think it cost him $40 or $45.
He qualified for $27 on PokerStars.
In about 5 more years, we'll be saying invested $10. It gets lower every time we talk about it.
I had $60 in my account and I played a $39 tournament on PokerStars.
Mediocre guy living a mediocre life who all of a sudden jumps online, figures out he's got a knack at this game, pulled together all of this money from friends, that he didn't even have, to go take this chance.
Go to my dad and another guy, get $2,000 each from them. Instead of paying my credit card debts, I take it out to Vegas with me like a genius.
The lights of Las Vegas illuminate the largest cash prize of any competition. More than the Masters, Wimbledon, or Kentucky Derby. $2.5 million. This is the World Series of Poker.
I went out to Vegas a week early, and the reason I did that is most of my experience was online. So I went down there, I played some no-limit cash games to get experience, to make sure I didn't have tells. But I make a deal with myself that I'm only going to play poker. When that deal gets thrown out the window and I see the sports book, that's a whole different story, I guess. I lost a lot of it in the sports book. By the time the tournament started, I was broke.
Lana, part of the romance of this event is the fact that anybody can pay the $10,000 and play alongside some of the all-time greats like Johnny Chan. It's a poker fantasy camp of sorts. But the reality is most everyone here has no chance of winning.
The morning of, I woke up and I was nervous as could be. And as I started playing, I saw, heard some guy has 20,000 in chips already. I'm like, wow, I haven't played a hand. Some guy's got 20,000. This is a disaster. So we start day 3, and I walk in, and I can't find table 77. I'm looking all over for it. Where's table 77? Oh, that's the TV table. I'm like, great. I'm at table with Johnny Chan, 2 seats to my left, and I'm on the TV table. Howard Letter's at the table, too. It's me, him, and Howard at the same table. That's just beautiful. I'm petrified.
Oh, yeah, Johnny Chan's always fun. Fearsome sight at the table. He's called the perfect player. Howard Lederer is called the professor of poker. He looks smart, he plays smart.
There is our featured table for the day. And a good look at Chris Moneymaker, just a regular guy, an accountant for a restaurant chain, here with the big boys.
I told myself I'm not going to let him beat me up. Just don't do anything. Don't play any hand that's going to make you look like an idiot. And don't do anything stupid.
Now looking at the hole cards of Johnny Chan with a king-jack. Next in line, Chris Moneymaker.
Chris Moneymaker, interestingly, had never played in a live.
I'm trying to pick up information on the two guys at the table I have no information on, Howard Lederer and Johnny Chan. So I keep staring at both of them, trying to pick up information as my big blind. And I put my card protector on my chips, and I'm sitting in the one seat.
And here he is in Las Vegas, staring down two of the biggest names in the game, Howard Lederer and Johnny Chan.
Paying so much attention, Johnny had raised and Howard had re-raised, so it was back on Johnny, I thought.
And he's using their techniques on them right now.
You know, it's up to you, right?
I didn't even know I had a hand. I'm sorry.
Or is he? I think he just forgot to play, Norm.
You're staring at him. I'm thinking, what? Are you looking into his soul or what?
Sorry, yeah, I thought y'all were in the hand. I didn't even look down.
He just flat out forgot, Norman.
I don't even think I ever looked at my cards. I could have pocket aces right there. I don't know. And I go, God, that's kind of, I didn't want to look like an idiot on TV. I can't believe I just did that. And Johnny just looks at me and goes, don't worry, kid, that won't make it on TV. It loosened me up from there. I was just like, you know what? I've done that. Might as well just play from here on out.
This is a great spot for Chris Moneymaker.
I'm all in.
And he goes all in.
And Howard does indeed fold, and Moneymaker backs Lederer down.
I can breathe again.
And Chris Moneymaker takes the pot.
Maybe if you're Chris Moneymaker, Lon, you're wondering if you've got what it takes to beat these big boys.
They picked on me a lot. I picked it up a little bit. I didn't play position very well. They just beat my head in over and over and over.
Checking the clock, this could be the final hand of the session. Players are going to want to make some fireworks before they hit the exits.
And we're about ready to go on a break, and I'm on the button with an ace-8 of hearts.
Over to Chris Moneymaker. And he's going to raise 6,000 to Johnny Chan.
Johnny's on the big blind. He calls. He always defends his blind against me. Pissed me off because he always outplayed me after the flop, and it was so frustrating. So he calls, and I'm like, all right, just give me a flop.
He's got a king-5 suited.
And this is a good flop for Moneymaker.
Well, the rest of the players have left the table for the break, and right now we have the perfect player against the amateur of amateur, mano a mano, in this hollowed-out poker ring.
Johnny bets, I raise, and then he re-raises, and I push all in. It's like, this is just a nightmare.
All right, here you go.
Johnny's going to put it on the line.
I need a heart, dealer.
Johnny's best chance is a deuce for a straight.
So I figure he has ace-king. I know he has ace-king to be putting his money in there.
Well, yeah, man, bad shape.
I was like, wow, I got my money in really good here. No deuce.
The turn card, a 9 of hearts, and that's going to do it. Chris Moneymaker with the ace-high flush takes down Johnny Chan.
Wow, this is like Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson.
Once I put him out, I saw how he put his money in, drawing to nothing. It's like, wow, you know, he beat me up for that long, and he probably didn't have much. Maybe I can start gambling, and these players aren't as good as I thought.
Just got a lucky hand and caught him that time. I came in nervous as could be, and I've loosened up. So I hope I can finish this thing off and be a real moneymaker. I don't know.
Rookie Chris Moneymaker is still alive. Here comes the river. It's another king for Chris Moneymaker. Another good hand for Chris Moneymaker.
Moneymaker with the better kicker.
A huge hand for Chris Moneymaker.
Only an 8 is going to save Chris Moneymaker.
Here comes the turn, and it's an 8 of clubs. An amazing turn of events. Chris Moneymaker got the miracle 8 on the turn. Wow, what a move by Chris Moneymaker.
He put his tournament life at stake on a pair of 3s. He's out of the tournament if he loses that pot.
It's not poker strategy that anybody would write up. How far can this young kid from Knoxville go?
We're still looking at Phil Ivey in the field, and I still think he's the man to beat.
It's been a long day. You know, everybody's tired, everybody's yawning, and I'm on the button with an ace-queen.
The flop comes 2 queens.
A monster flop for Chris Moneymaker, who makes 3 queens.
I'm like, Yahtzee. All right, no one's going to have any of this. Everybody's going to fold when I bet the flop. So Phil Ivey checks, Jason Lester checks, and it's on, man, I only bet 75,000. I want to keep people around.
I thought he might have pushed it more. Generally,
Ivey calls and Lester folds his 10s.
At this point, the next person knocked out doesn't make the final table, so Jason Lester.
Here comes the turn, and it's a 9, and that gives Phil Ivey a full house.
Miracle on 4th Street for Phil
And
Ivey.
turn card comes a 9, which fills up Phil Ivey. He has 9s full of queens now to my 3 queens. He checks, and at this point, okay, I'm ready to end the hand. I mean, he's got 400,000 left. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get this hand over with. I'm going to bet 200,000 and just end it, and we'll go on to the next one. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm all in.
He is all in.
And quickly called.
The pot size is $1 million now.
Nice full.
Yeah, Moneymaker is disgusted. He never could have assumed the 2 9s in the hole for Phil Ivey.
He flips over 2 9s, and I'm just disgusted.
Which would knock out Phil Ivey.
Moneymaker's looking for an ace on the river. It's an ace!
An ace!
An incredible knockout blow for probably the best player left in the tournament, who's gone down.
Oh, amazing. Phil Ivey loses with a full house to a better full house of
I'm so excited I can't see straight. 1, I get to go home and go to bed. And 2, I've got a huge chip lead. I'm up to 2.1 million in chips. I'm by far the biggest chip leader. I can just sit there and coast on the final table and probably get 3rd place. So I'm on cloud 9.
Welcome back to the 2003 World Series of Poker. Just 3 players remaining in the tournament. That means 836 people.
Once we hit 3-handed, though, I turned into a madman. I just started raising every pot. I was beating the living hell out of them.
Moneymaker remains a one-man posse. He's a bounty hunter who keeps just piling up skins.
The river card is the final card for Dan Harrington. He is eliminated.
Oh, money!
Approaching 1:30 in the morning. Final table has taken 11 hours or so to this point.
Don't do it.
And is a 3 of hearts.
Moneymaker doesn't get to either draw, and the pair of 9s is best.
I'm all in.
Chris is all in.
Chris Moneymaker going all in with nothing.
A stunning play from Moneymaker, who missed his draws, has nothing, and now has put Sam Farhall all in. He would have to put all his chips in. If he lost this pot, he would be out of the tournament.
Is Chris bluffing this time?
No.
There was a game that he used to play as a kid. And Mom would say, okay, quiet. And so the first one that said something or moved lost, and the other one got a prize. I've seen him sit in one spot and just be quiet, you know. And you're talking, you know, a 12-year-old kid being quiet for 6 hours? They did it.
Sam Farhall trying to draw something out of Chris Moneymaker, but he's like a statue, afraid to make any sort of move. He is not going to do it. Chris Moneymaker bluffs Sam Farha out of a big stack of money.
And considering this situation, I know we're early in the century, but that's the bluff of the century. What a play from Chris Moneymaker.
And here it comes. It is Jack 5-4, 2 pair for Chris Moneymaker.
That day, that time, I was the best player on that table, and I knew it.
Okay, I'll go all in. Let's go.
I'll call. Sam Farhall goes all in, and Chris Moneymaker's going to call it.
It's surreal, you know. I get him in. I have 2 pair, and he flop top pair, and we get all the money. I know I'm by far the best hand. Flip our cards over. I do have the best hand. I'm just like, please hold on.
And with 2 pair, Chris Moneymaker, a statistic.
In the final night, we were all there in the office at 4 o'clock in the morning. Everybody just kind of waiting, you know, thinking, you know, this could end soon.
To win this title at the outset is now closing in on making it an incredible reality.
I think Chris Moneymaker is probably one of the most important figures in poker today just because of what he symbolizes.
Turn card is an 8 of diamonds.
No help yet, and Farha to stay alive.
Chris Moneymaker is probably why I have a job today. It definitely starts the boom of online poker because people realize with like a small investment, you could become a millionaire.
Hollywood can't write a script like that.
If Moneymaker can do it, I can do it.
This could be the last card of the 2003 World Series of Poker.
The Moneymaker effect is really the best representation of our essence and character.
I can't sit here and describe how it feels. It's a phenomenal feeling that words cannot describe. I can't even begin to describe it. What was going through my mind.
Stepped out of the virtual poker room and in a very swift and unlikely manner is atop the poker world.
This is beyond fairy tale. It's inconceivable.
I mean, Chris Moneymaker changed this game when he won it all. I got to tell you, the professional poker players should be, kissing the Tennessee tuchus of that kid.
It's a great sports-like story. It's a great David versus Goliath story. And so Moneymaker's 2003 championship was just great for our game because everybody said, if Moneymaker can do it, why can't I do it?
If I was to point to two absolutely watershed moments in poker history in the modern era that absolutely catapulted this game from backroom to a major league sport in a sense, it would be two things. It would be Amarillo Slim winning the 1972 World Series of Poker and the after effects, and certainly Chris Moneymaker's win in 2003.
You went from online $40 to $2.5 million in front of a nation.
After Chris Moneymaker, you had a group of young online players that were actually making a living playing online.
That's the epitome of the American dream. I mean, people came to this country with nothing in their pocket with the ideas of someday seeing hundreds just dripping out of them. Well, Moneymaker did the exact same thing. He went from nothing to a millionaire overnight. That's what people want.
And as it shows in the next 2-3 years, it went from 839 to 26 to 56 to 87. You went up in 3 years tenfold in the number of participants. Everyone thinks they can win it.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's kids growing up that are 17 or 18 and have a Chris Moneymaker poster on the wall instead of a Kobe Bryant one. Not so sure how good that would look on the wall, but I mean, that's the point, is that people say, you know what, Chris Moneymaker can do it. I can do it too.
Welcome to Poker for Dummies. I'm Chris Moneymaker from Nashville, Tennessee. And yes, that's my real last name.
The best part about the Chris Moneymaker story is I heard that one of his partners was a guy named David Gamble, and I was like, yeah, come on, right, okay, I believe the Moneymaker thing, but now that's just like urban myth. And then one day, I'm in the elevator at the downtown Binion's Horseshoe, and I'm like, hey, Chris, whatever, I'm meeting him or for the second or third time, And he goes, this is my buddy David. And I'm like, oh, yeah, David Gamble, joking around like, I heard about the David Gamble story. And he goes, yeah, that's my name, David Gamble. I'm like, and then I'm freaking out. I'm like, are you really David? And he got to the point where he realized I was in such consternation and disbelief. He actually pulled out his ID, and there I looked at it. It said David Gamble. And I was like, that's the epilogue to that story that people don't even know. His buddy's name was David Gamble.
Let's get more money.
Maybe there is a God. And he looked down, he's like, well, look at this guy, and his partner's name is Gamble. Okay, these guys are going to win.
She's got money.
Money. Is it a lot of money?
Money.
I was on Montana Avenue in Santa Monica when I got an email.
It took a little while to sink into what actually happened.
I was driving to Caesar's Palace, and I got this phone call.
It's kind of like, where were you when JFK was shot?
I had just woken up in LA, and I went to my computer, and I started seeing tweets immediately talking about what's going to happen to my money.
And it was just like bam, 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 everyone tweeting about, oh my God.
I was on the phone with somebody and they're like, can you believe what's going on? And I'm like, what's going on? And they said, wow, and then blah, 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 blah. They shut this down, they shut that down, da, 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 da. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, really?
It was like the end of the world in poker. It just, everything stopped right there. It was over.
Well, April 15th is typically known as most people as tax day, but unfortunately, April 15th, 2011 will be forever known for poker players, especially online poker players, as Black Friday. That's the day that the Department of Justice indicted about 11 people. They focused on 3 websites, Poker Stars, Full Tilt Poker, and Absolute Poker.
And what they were charging was illegal online gambling, but also importantly, bank fraud, money laundering.
There was no more questionable intent from the government. They made it very clear that they had every intent to shut down online poker completely.
The Department of Justice indicted the founders of the world's 3 largest internet poker companies for bank fraud, money laundering, and circumventing U.S. gambling laws. It blocked the websites from U.S. users.
The first thing I did was log on to the 2 accounts that I have, and to my surprise, I saw something that was very frightening. I saw a big giant seal Department of Justice logo, a very ominous type thing. This was clearly not good, and it was certainly the first indication that I think we really had in concrete that everything had suddenly changed.
Some breaking news related to, I don't know, man, but Full Tilt Poker and Ponzi scheme in the same sentence, D-Row.
Yes, Scott. There's a new amended complaint from the civil point of view from the Department of Justice today saying that Full Tilt Poker operated a Ponzi scheme.
The U.S. Attorney in Manhattan says the site illegally paid $440 million to its directors, money that the site allegedly took from customer accounts.
They've also, by the way, added 2 big poker stars' names, Chris Ferguson and Howard Lederer, to the civil case here, but it's unbelievable.
I think that the lead of our story was like not about cheating, but about bluffing, where you're going to continue to make it seem like this company, you know, is doing okay and has money to pay everybody and there's no problems here, and you're using that to then take money out of the company, and then it turns out that really you were bluffing. There is no money. Money's gone.
Oh, hi, John. Richard Anthony. How are you? I was at work here in New York trading options, and I saw on the Bloomberg a news flash, and I looked at my account at Full Tilt Poker, and I saw that there was no availability to the funds.
And eventually the Justice Department did work out deals with these websites that would allow them to allow the players to access the site in order to get their money back. It's just, as we now know, one of the major sites, Full Tilt Poker, couldn't pay the players back.
It's a day that will be etched in infamy.
Well, the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York decided that it was more important to prosecute online poker sites for receiving money for people to play poker and paying out the winners than to prosecute the clear chicanery perpetrated by Goldman Sachs and the other large investment banks on Wall Street and off of Wall Street.
Our government's a squirrely little bunch, but you know, it's all about money. They want more money because they spend all the money they have, so they have to go get more.
$3 billion is what the DOJ is asking for. $1.5 billion from Poker Stars, $1 billion from Full Tilt, and $500 million from the Absolute UB group. And that was kind of their demand for like fines and penalties.
The government believes that playing poker on the internet is illegal, period. If there are people out there who think playing poker is great, why do we care? Okay, that's fine for them, and maybe there are a lot of people that feel that way. But I think the government's position would be that it is an illegal activity.
So as to why it happened then, I mean, there's a whole bunch of conspiracy theories out there.
There's no question that some people feel that there's an underlying reason that this Black Friday happened, and obviously that's that certain states or certain people might be able to regulate online poker and take over that business, and as we know, that business was huge.
Well, if you follow the rule of follow the money, the casinos have a vested interest in being able to control not only the brick and mortar action, but the online action.
I think it's because a lot of the big casino entities want an easier entry into the United States market. And without Poker Stars and Full Tilt, you know, it's a lot easier.
The casino companies are ready to go for the most part. Caesars is already operating online poker outside of the United States. They are, they've been preparing for this for years. And that's one of the reasons, why it really helps to not have PokerStars and Full Tilt Poker in the market.
Internet poker was a lifeblood for hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, the best way to describe what an online poker player is, a successful online poker player, it's sort of like a day trader. I mean, these guys are basically sitting in their house like a day trader would, and have a set schedule, and they basically work for those hours. Playing poker is a skill, it's a craft, and it's something you develop over time. It's not something you can just pick up and just start doing and making money at. You have to actually work at it. And then for them the government to pull the plug like that and just take it all away, it messed up a lot of people. I've got a lot of friends that are in really bad shape right now.
Their monthly income has been not only affected, it is, in my case, it's just disappeared, because I played almost exclusively online.
When there's an industry that's this big, that's billions and billions of dollars, you sort of can't overstate the economic impact that something like this has.
Yeah, there's no question that Black Friday dented not only the income of poker players.
It's hurt a lot of people. It's hurt marketing companies, publishing companies. I mean, television shows have gone off the air, which trickled down to people like, us, Bluff Magazine and other websites.
It just goes boom, 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 boom.
You can imagine, on a given day when we're doing a production, 80 people are working. And they're all thinking, show's coming to an end. Will there be no more poker shows?
These shows aren't going to come back next year. These after dark pokers. I mean, who's going to put the money up for it?
If you look at it, the poker companies created the poker boom and had a huge amount to do with it on television. And so, was the poker boom a real boom, or was it a manufactured thing by these online poker companies? And can it outlast PokerStars and Full Tilt Poker? From the last number I had seen was a few months ago, I think, was that the amount of people playing poker in the US was about 50% of what it was. So it's not zero.
If you don't care about poker at all, you should still be on our side. You love to bowl. Great. Who could imagine any moral objection to a game like bowling? But you know what? Games like golf and bowling have been banned way back in history. The King of Scotland thought too many people were spending too much time on golf because they loved it so much, so he banned it. And it's just like, what?
Is it pokered first? Is it something else second? Is it going to be something next after that? I don't know. But we got to stop it now.
Well, I'll tell you one interesting thing to me, which is that as a citizen, as a friend of poker players, I hate this. I hate what's happened. My heart goes out to these guys. I want them to be able to get their livelihoods back instantly. As a romantic, as somebody who has celebrated the outlaw spirit of poker and the poker player, something in me likes the idea that poker's back in the shadows again. That, at least mythically, poker had to go back into the saloons and back underground. Because one of the great things about what it meant to choose the life of a poker player was you were in the tradition of Doc Holliday, not in the tradition of Davis Love III, a professional golfer. And while 99% of me feels like we should get past this instantly, there is that 1% that still likes the idea that the poker player is somebody who flouts convention and doesn't need the government to say it's okay in order to engage in it, but is just determined to live by his wits no matter what.
Poker is as much a part of Americana as baseball and apple pie. There's a rich history and tradition to the game, closely associated with the growth of America.
We are a nation of immigrants. Immigrants have a different DNA. They are much more naturally risk takers, and the people who come over from Vietnam and Central America. Everybody who's here is 1 or 2 or 3 generations removed from people who took enormous risk.
There is a bit of, that Western swashbuckling, riverboat gambler mentality built into us. Poker's, the great American game.
And I think there is a mystique about people who, in a sense, can control their own destiny through gambling.
That was a crazy game.
Some people don't really take those real risks in their lives, and maybe the game is where they can take those risks.
Always before, there was the sense that I can do better than my father, and that sort of peaked. And so many children grow up today thinking, I'll never match Daddy. I'll never be as good as him.
I think now with mass television, with the movies that show enormous amounts of success quickly, that people want it more quickly because they're more aware of it than they were before.
So what do you do? Do you plan over the long haul? No, I'm going to get a quick kill. Poker, hey, man, I'll make a killing. That's how I'll do it. I can't beat Daddy over the long haul. I can beat him with a one-night stand.
People are always asking, has poker peaked? They say the boom is over. Nowadays, people are even asking if the American dream is gone. Let me tell you, neither are finished.
Okay, it's called the Poker Scope, and I invented it. The name of the company is Poker Heads. In 5 years, we've grown to this warehouse.
What they're doing is starting a new league.
Trying to redefine the idea of a great poker tournament.
It's a new thing.
I am the living proof. This is American dream. You know, baby?
People all over the world are starting to play poker. It's no longer just an American dream. It's a European dream. It's an African dream. It's an Asian dream. It's a Latin dream. And maybe what we're starting to see, this dream, where anything is possible, is probably our greatest gift to the world.
We have the Asia Pacific Poker Tour, the Russian Poker Tour, the Latin American Poker Tour, the North American Poker Tour, the Italian Poker Tour, the French Poker Tour, the UK Poker Tour, the Australian Poker Tour.
Poker now it's international. I mean, everybody plays now.
It's one of our biggest exports. Poker is on a worldwide explosion.
Spain is booming right now. Brazil is booming right now.
I had a letter yesterday from a guy saying he's got 84 million people in China playing Texas Holdem.
They call it a Black Friday, they can call it a Black Year. The game is not going anywhere.
I've had a lot of people tell me that the poker boom is over, it's yesterday's news, and I chuckle when I hear that. Poker's been around for hundreds of years. I mean, it didn't just happen in 2001 or 2002 or when the camera was invented or anything like that. Poker is a game that's going to survive long after we're gone.
April 15th rolled around, and all the experts said the World Series of Poker is going to get devastated, it's going to cut in half. And I said no. It turned out that I was right, it was bigger. And I'm really not worried about the future of poker.
We still find that there are millions of Americans who play in a regularly scheduled game. I don't think that will go away anytime soon.
It doesn't really matter what the government does. It's not going anywhere.
Poker isn't going anywhere because there's always going to be somebody chasing the action.
And once online poker becomes legalized and regulated in the U.S., which is going to happen, you're going to see another poker explosion take off once again.
Every sport has been subject to the discussion of whether or not its time has passed. And I think the fact is, if you are the subject of that discussion, that would suggest that you have in fact arrived.
Because when you play poker, it doesn't make a difference where you're from, who you are, who your parents are, what you look like, what your religion is. Because when you sit down at the poker table, it's just you versus the other player. And even if the chips are down and you didn't get dealt the cards you wish you had, you can still walk away a winner. Now let me ask you something. Where in life can you get odds like that?
You know, why do the world's biggest movie stars, you know, why do they seem to be so impressed by me?
I personally hate talking about poker. People always want to talk about poker. And, you know, I have certain rules when it comes to discussing poker that my friends that are kind of getting into poker know that I don't really like talking about poker.
They respect me because I've had perfect honor and integrity in the game all these years. And I happen to be a really great guy away from the table.
The two things that I've never done that I feel sort of like diminishes me as a man in the late 20th and early 21st century. I never took up golf, and I never played poker.
Under conditions, it can be a contact sport, as a matter of fact.
And you just burn that $100 bill, and you try not to get burned yourself,
at the table. And what people think is that you're so crazy, and they'll call you more.
The cigar smoke was so thick, and the whiskey was so abundant, and the cursing was great. And I suspect that even then people looked upon it as, should a president be doing this in the White House? But Harding had his own outsider status. He was also having sex with a woman in the closet, so in the middle of the White House. So I guess playing poker was okay for him.
I do have vices, madam, but they're all the vices of a gentleman.
People who don't take risks don't get better.
Me, I don't think I've ever taken a risk.
I don't know. I mean, the funny thing is, you know what? I don't like thrill rides. I never want to do things like parachute, bungee jump.
I would say the biggest risk I ever took was getting married.
I guess I got married.
Getting married was the biggest risk. Marriage not included? Okay.
When you asked me what the biggest risk I've ever taken, I knew instantly what it was, and I'm legally, I can't talk about it. I can try and think of the second biggest one, but I'll tell you later.
I was able to feed my ego and my family.
You know, you think of poker, you think of dirty, dark room, and you think of seedy underworld characters of whatever. You know, there's money here on the table, and I'm hosting this game. I'm responsible to run a good, clean game. So, you know, don't fuck with me, okay?
Most of the people who kind of ascribe this dream or this thing, it's an emotional dream that they're having. It's this thing about passion and emotion, and oh, the moment when I crack him and I have this and he has that, you know. Whereas for the real guy who sits there and does it day in and day out, he's seen every possible thing that could happen.
Because I abhor Christmas and I'm a Jew, I don't have to celebrate Christmas with anybody. I'll go to Vegas and just play poker. There are a lot of people who are not interested in Jesus in this country, and many of them choose to gamble. And if you think about, like, well, where would the godless go? Vegas is a good destination, you know?